So I usually find that if you're doing the humor stuff, it's totally in the moment, and it's kind of like juggling, right? Like you're writing and going, does the plot fit? Do the characters, are they matching up with their story arcs? Can I throw, oh, joke here, got one, you know what I mean?
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Inside Comics. My name is George Michail, and really quick, if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe and tell a friend about it. Today, I'm super psyched. My guest is Ben Goldsmith. Ben, thanks for being on the show, dude.
Thank you for having me and for being super psyched. I've been on podcasts before where people were psyched, but not super psyched. That's good. That's new for me.
Awesome. So you have a cool new book about bodybuilding aliens from Source Point Press called Second Place. And we're going to get into that in a minute, but yeah, there it is. But I do want to talk to you about writing comedy. How do you go about that, developing like a script for comedy?
It's a great question. I slowly, it's, I realized it's why there's writer rooms in comedy. It's so much easier to do something funny or to bring the funny out when there's other people going, oh no, that thing you just said, but like, and then and everyone's bouncing ideas off, and so when you're sitting alone by yourself, it's a lot harder to be funny. It's like you're like, oh man, I think this is funny. Luckily for me, because the comic is a mockumentary comic, a lot of the humor comes from that, right? That was the big driving force, and as far as the comedy goes, I was like, it always kind of came second. As long as there was as long as all the story was there, then I could sort of add in the little ornamentation, right? And those were the little jokes here and there, and yeah, so it was interesting. Like oh man, I wish if I do another one, I definitely want to have a writer's room. It's so much better.
I find it hard writing comedy a lot because you have to develop your script over time, and you read it over and over and over and over and over again. And that thing that you thought was clever and smart when you wrote it originally, 3 months later, you're like questioning yourself, like, is this actually funny? I don't know. And then you're like telling it to other people looking for validation. Whereas if you write like a cool fight scene or like a scary horror scene, you're kind of good with that. Like you don't really second guess yourself the same way as you do with comedy.
Yeah, well, that and like so much of comedy is it's kind of things are funny. Like if I had written in like a Tiger King joke, and now it's like, well, now it's kind of passe, and the amount of time it takes to have a comic get made from start to finish, like it takes forever, right? So yeah, you have to sort of stay away. You go with the classics, right? Like you go with the same stuff that it's like the Who's on First. It's Abbott and Costello running away from the mummy. It's all like the classic stuff that just isn't never not funny. Isn't never not funny. Triple negative. That's a word score bonus right there.
So I find when I'm like trying to write comedy in my scripts, I will plan it out very much the same way as like an action beat, where it's like I'll have a vision of something that I want to see happen in my comic book, whether it's a fight, whether it's just some cool moment between characters, like a decapitation and like some sort of horror thing or something that I want to build towards. It's very much the same way with comedy. I have like a gag in mind, and I'm kind of working towards that, and then it hits. Do you find, is your process similar to that or not really?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Especially like I said with the mockumentary thing, because you're playing with you're playing with the thing that happens, and then the joke can be the reaction in the booth, in the confessional booth, right? So you have like a panel of the thing that happens, and then the reaction panel. So you're staging that, right? Because when you're writing your panels out, you're saying like, this is what I want the audience to focus on. This is where I can put the most action here. This is the important beat. And so it's the same thing with the confessional. You're going, all right, here I can land the joke in this confessional thing, and it doesn't need to be in the scene proper per se, right? Or running gags. If I'm going to do a running gag, which we do with the confessional, it's you're planning ahead for that. You're like, okay, I know over these 4 pages, the last panel of each page is going to be we're going to harken back to this running gag. So yeah, you're absolutely plotting those things out. I mean, with mockumentary specific, I'm not positive on how that would differ if it was just a straight comedy. But it's like what are the comedy books that are like Chew? Okay, like Chew is incredible. Chew's legitimately funny, and a lot of that is because the reaction shots are so good. Like what books do you have any in mind that you think you're like that's a funny book?
No, man, I'm a big fan of like stand-up comedy and comedy movies and horror
Yeah,
comedy.
same.
But as far as like comedy in comic books, you don't see a lot of it. And Spider-Man's got his quips and things like that, but I wouldn't classify that as a comedy. I guess like the humor that I'm trying to put in my scripts, or I'm writing a horror comedy right now. It's not influenced by other comic books. It's more influenced from other forms of media, I guess. Have you ever tried doing stand-up comedy?
Me, God, no. That have you?
No, I've thought about it a lot, but I've never done it.
Yeah, I really, I mean, I do like you. I watch a lot of it, and I really like it. I like it as an art form. But oh my God, I'd bomb so hard. I would do. I think I'd be more inclined to do improv stuff. I really, because I mean, it's the booth, right? When you're at the table and you're talking to people, you're going with whatever's happening. Someone's like, "Oh man, can you believe spaghetti sauce cost?" So you're like, "Oh, I'm the spaghetti sauce. You want to buy this because we agree on spaghetti?" You know what I mean? So it's like you're already used to sort of going with the thing anyway. That's what we do. So I would be more inclined to try improv.
Yeah, no, you're right. Talking in front of people at conventions is, there's a lot of humorous moments that come up for sure. And then, being a part of panels and kind of talking about your book, you got to try and be charming and interesting. And so we do get a lot of practice in this. It's all part of the job of being a writer, is selling our projects and trying to be likable.
Right? Yeah, like let me be a good writer. Let me learn how to do all these and also be likable. It's like, oh God, all right. Can I just work on a thing I like? Is that a thing I can do?
Do you keep a notebook, or do you keep notes on your phone of like when you think things are funny to kind of inject into your scripts?
That's dude. What a good question. Because I do know that like a ton of comedians, that's like a huge thing, right? Is they have the like especially like Mitch Hedberg. He used to have next to his bed, and he would wake up, and if he would knew he would write it down, because if he didn't, it wouldn't he wouldn't if he didn't write it down, he wouldn't remember it. And yeah, a lot of comedians do that. I don't do that with the comics. I feel like it's usually kind of in the moment. You know why? Because the difference is like you said earlier, it's about paneling, right? So it's like even if I think something's funny, if I can't figure out how to get it in on the page count, or it so much more other things become important, right? Like you'll ditch a joke if you have to get a plot point across because real estate is so crucial. So I usually find that if you're doing the humor stuff, it's totally in the moment, and it's kind of like juggling, right? Like you're writing and going, does the plot fit? Do the characters, are they matching up with their story arcs? Can I throw joke here? Got one, you know what I mean? And so it's a lot of that, and yeah, it's what's funny about this, man, is you asked you're like, let's talk about the comedy, and I was like, that's great. And it's so wild because I started doing horror comics, and I now switching back and forth, because I'm ramping up to do some more seance room stuff. I find it so much easier to get myself to sit down to write the horror stuff than I do to sit down to write the comedy stuff, because it's the difference between going to the gym and doing the mile on the treadmill that you do all the time versus doing the the new workout that tests your different new muscles, and you're like, you really have to mentally gear up to get to, I think because of the that whole bit of the comedy writing thing. It's a different beast entirely. Again, writer's room would, I think, help that a lot.
Let's get into second place. Can you tell me specifically what this comic book is about?
Sure. So second place, you can get either the A cover or the Rob Guillory B cover, which I love. It is about bodybuilding aliens. It's a mockumentary style comic book, as I told you earlier, with the talking to the confessional, and it's about bodybuilding aliens. And I, the mockumentary thing is I love. Did you ever see Spinal Tap? Obviously, Drop Dead Gorgeous was a movie that I'm obsessed with. And even your TV shows, your Office, your Parks and Rec, like that mockumentary genre is so fruitful, and yet no comics had really done it. So I wanted to do that. And then you're like, okay, well, what's something that if you or I were going to make a documentary about something, it would be niche, it would be interesting. Well, a bunch of aliens that subscribe and adore and worship Earth bodybuilding. That's pretty unique. It's a small group of people. So we follow them. And what the actual story is that our main character here, Farrig, he and this other guy, Army, used to always come in first and second. Our lead character would come in first. Army would come in second. Now, our main character on the last day of the competition finds out that his wife his girlfriend at the time is pregnant. He also gets offered to go be a big movie star. So he actually chooses to stay, start a family, open the gym. The guy who always came in second place goes off and becomes a movie star. As this comic starts, we find out that they are filming this documentary, but also the movie star is coming back to film his own documentary, which sort of forces our main character, Farrig, to look at, did he come in second place, which is why we named it that. Yeah, so that's again, it's kind of I call it the Trojan horse, right? It's like, yeah, here's this bodybuilding alien mockumentary. Our choices are really hard, it's like, so you kind of get people in, and then really the meat of it is a very honest tale about a guy who, the what ifs, right? The what ifs.
That's absolutely true. Like so often we wrap our stories in genre and have fantastical elements in them, but at its core, it's a personal story, or it's a story that's relatable to many people, even though there's aliens in it, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about the art team on the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great question, man. Asking about the artist, that's awesome. You're good at this. Ed Smith is he's a first published book, and he does a pretty fantastic job. It's extremely cartoony. He went well out of his way to make sure that all the panels really look like they were coming from one camera. So stuff that's like, you're not getting a lot of top-down shots because they wouldn't be able to do that, right? And the colors are bright. Alex Hoey is this new guy too. He does great stuff, and it's cartoony. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to. I don't know, man. I wanted to step away from the bleakness of the seance room, and then Beyond the Demon, the Sea, the tattoo book, and then it's like this other book I have coming out soon. It's a dark pirate Maori tale. It's like I really wanted to just do something fun for a little bit. What it was is I wanted to read a script to my fiance and not have her want to die after I finished. That was I think part of it.
Yeah, my wife is a very patient woman too. I read my scripts to her, and you can just tell looking at the watch and it's like, oh god, like how much is this?
every
How
like
long
every
are you
once in a
gonna be
while,
doing this to me?
just to wipe the taste of the death and decay out of her poor mind. Can you wipe taste out of a mind? I don't know. I didn't want to the as I was saying it though, I didn't want to say wipe the taste of death and decay out of your mouth, because it's like a whole other level of gross that I didn't want to put on your lovely wife there.
All right. Well, Ben Goldsmith, it's been great having you on Inside Comics. I want to encourage everyone to seek out Second Place. I've included a link in the description of this video to the Source Point Press store, or you can ask your local comic book store to bring it in for you. And thanks again, Ben, for being on the show.